We talked about it, we thought about it, and it happened. Kiké Hernández is back with the Dodgers. Manuel Margot is no longer with the Dodgers. We'll talk about that trade that sent Margot to the Twins, the Kik'e signing and everything that comes with it, and looking forward to Tuesday's game at Camelback. I don't know if it's at Camelback Ranch, but either way, Tuesday's game. That's what's coming up, so let's get locked on Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yo, Dodger fans. Welcome to Locked On Dodgers. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 local sports daily podcast network. Locked On, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers join and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. This is the daily podcast covering the Los Angeles Dodgers, bringing you the smart fans perspective on our boys in blue. You can find us wherever you find podcasts and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. And if you want to become an everydayer, all you have to do is listen or watch every day, which can be made easier by subscribing and get notified when our new episodes are up. We know that yesterday's show on the podcast platforms maybe never showed up for you or showed up for you very late, depending.
It'll show up eventually, but as we're recording, it's still not up.
Yeah, so it's on YouTube. It really did happen. We didn't miss a day. We switched over hosts of the podcast, and it just really took very long and still continues to take long. But, you can still listen to it or go watch it on YouTube. But if this is your first time listening watching, welcome. My name is Vince Samperio. This is my co-host, Jeff Snyder. Jeff and I are both lifelong Dodger fans that have spent our entire lives watching the Dodgers, or at least the part of our lives that we can remember. And we've spent the last 5 years doing this podcast, and we've spent more than that covering the Dodgers in a variety of ways. But we're not quite insiders. We're just here to bring you what we believe is smart and thoughtful and rational takes about the Dodgers, making all of us better Dodger fans together. And we're here to do that once again today. And, shout out to the Dodgers. They've continued to give us things to talk through the offseason, through now spring training, and they did it again because we got news on Monday morning that Manuel Margot, well, I guess before that, Kiké Hernández had posted on his Instagram his goodbye to LA post from 2021. And, it was obviously speculated that he was joining another team. It had been reported that he was supposed to sign by Sunday or Monday. There was 4 teams, the Twins, Giants, Padres, and Angels. And yeah, so it seemed like that. Then we got news that Manuel Margot, who was supposed to lead off in the game on Monday, was scratched. Very shortly after that, he was traded to the Twins. And very shortly after that, we got the reports that the Dodgers were closing in on a deal with Kik'e. All that probably in the span, between the Kik'e post and Kik'e resigning a couple hours, but in the sign of Manuel Margot traded and Kik'e being signed, it was probably like 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah, it was kind of crazy. I did a radio spot with the radio station in Fresno on Monday late morning, and I actually caused a little bit of a stir with the host with the hot take that I didn't think Manuel Margot would be on the Dodgers active roster after the trade deadline. And then within an hour, I realized, wow, I was off by about 5 months. And luckily, we had time to go back and re-record that particular segment before it went on the radio. But yeah, do you think, Vince, that Kiké Hernández orchestrated this? Because it really did work out perfectly. Because with the Twins being one of the finalists for Kiké Hernández, it seems like what happened is Kik'e told the Twins, "I'm not signing with you guys," and so the Twins pivoted to Margot. Which then opened up a spot for Kik'e to sign with the Dodgers, who weren't one of his finalists, but were the team that he always wanted to sign with. I don't know if he did that on purpose, but if he did, it couldn't have gone any better if he had done it on purpose.
Yeah, if he did do it, props and salute to him. What I am curious about was that post this morning. Like, was it a troll job, or was he legitimately already, did this all come together in that couple hour span? Because, he did put a picture of him with a funny face saying psych later, but that could have just been him after the fact. So,
well, Freddie Freeman said in his interview with Kirsten Watson in the second inning of Monday's game that he talked to Kik'e earlier in the day, and Kik'e told him he was coming back. So we don't know exactly what times, looking at timestamps and everything, but I would guess that Kik'e knew he was coming back when he posted that, and because that's definitely the kind of joke that Kik'e would play.
Yeah, that makes more sense. I mean, that makes a lot of sense for him. But yeah, all in all, the Dodgers in the trade, Manuel Margot and Dane Rincon to the Twins, who is a lower level prospect for the Dodgers. They got back middle infielder Noah Miller, who was a first round comp pick in 2021, number 36 overall. We'll talk about him real quick. He's very, very, very good defensively. He was the overall Gold Glove winner in the minor leagues last year, I believe, or 2 years ago. And can't really hit. The Dodgers have been able to turn guys that can't really hit into guys that can hit, at least formidably. So that remains to be seen. But from everything I've read about him, just the glove should get him to the major leagues at the very least.
Yeah, apparently the glove is so good because, that seems to be the consensus that he's a big leaguer simply because of his glove. Like the Miguel Rojas type, or Ray Ordonez from a previous generation. Somebody whose glove is so good he'll get to the big leagues. And it really is a question: can he be a star in the big leagues? That depends on whether the Dodgers can help him become a better hitter. But the one way I saw this trade described, because he and Duncan are both minor league shortstops, that the Dodgers traded a higher ceiling for a higher floor. That Miller is going to be a big leaguer. Duncan has potential to become a star. He has the tools, but also has potential to flame out.
Yeah, and this is the second trade the Dodgers have made this offseason, getting back a middle infielder that, doesn't need to be on the 40-man roster yet, but if you kind of look at it, like middle infield close to the majors is probably one of their weaker spots in the farm system. So they've shored up a little bit there. So at the very least, if there is an injury in the major leagues, they could hold down somebody. I mean, or two injuries, if it's Rojas and Lex or whatever the case is, they can hold down defensively with at least one of those two guys if they really needed to.
Yeah.
But somebody that also kind of fixes that is Kiké Hernández, who is now back with the Dodgers. It was a 1 year, $4 million deal been reported, probably a little bit lower than maybe we expected. But I think from everything Kiké said when he came back to the Dodgers last year, and from what we've seen so far and heard of him wanting to come back this offseason, I really think Kiké just valued his. I'm not going to be surprised if we hear that he had bigger and better deals from other teams, but I really think he valued the happiness and knowing what his role would be here, even if it's not a starting role.
Yeah, when Kik'e left the Dodgers in free agency a few years ago, we knew it was going to happen. And it was because he was good enough to start. There were going to be teams that gave him starting opportunities, and the Dodgers just didn't have that opportunity for him. So it made sense that he left. And I honestly believed that would be the same thing this offseason, because he definitely didn't have a role to be a starter with the Dodgers. And I assumed that there would be somewhere that he could start, or at least get a lot of playing time, more than he would with the Dodgers. I still think that's probably true, like you said. And I think that what we saw was Kik'e values winning more than anything right now. Kike's gotten a big contract, a big free agent contract already. He's won a World Series. He's been on a bad team now. And so now I think he just wants to be on a winning team. And honestly, watching what the Dodgers did this offseason, I think anybody would want to play for the Dodgers right now, especially if there's a role for him, and recognize, even if it's not a huge role with a lot of playing time, it's a role. And having a role where, he can dream of looking back on the 2024 World Series title and, having that second World Series ring. And I would guess that that's more important to him right now than playing time or money.
Yeah. So what will that role Kik'e have with the Dodgers? We'll get into it. Dave Roberts talked about that, and we'll bid adieu to longtime Dodger Manuel Margot. So make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, that's what brings home the winning trophy, and it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From roof racks, superchargers, LED headlights, exhaust kits, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you always find exactly what you're looking for. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day. Make sure to find us wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. We're here for you 30 minutes every Monday through Friday. If you want to become an everyday, all you have to do is listen or watch every day. If you're already on YouTube, you can also go to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles. They're from the Locked On Podcast Network. 24/7 streaming channels going through the news and stories from the sports world and the LA sports world. You'll definitely catch us on the LA side, and you'll sometimes catch us on the Locked On Sports Today side. So go check those out on YouTube. All right, Jeff. So Kik'e, we got comments from Dave Roberts shortly after the trade, and he kind of said that Kik'e is going to play mostly against left-handed pitching, filling in at short or at third or in the outfield, wherever he's kind of needed. It makes sense in that realm that he can kind of just give guys day offs every so often. You know, Gavin Lux will probably need a couple extra days off here and there, and if they want a bat more than Rojas's glove, that can happen there. In the outfield, whether it's for Outman or instead of Hayward now, that's possible. And then third base for Muncy, you get a couple days off. Basically him and Chris Taylor are probably going to be doing the same thing, just moving around, maybe sometimes starting the same game, maybe not. But yeah, it makes sense. We talked about this when we said, should the Dodgers bring Kik'e? And it made sense because of that versatility. He can play the infield and the outfield. I know that he struggled with his defense a little bit last year. I don't know if we talked about on this because he wasn't technically a Dodger anymore, but he did have double hernia surgery shortly or in October, right around the World Series time. So that might have been an issue for him last year playing on defense. As far as we've known, he's always been good enough defensively wherever they've put him. And when he came to the Dodgers, he performed better than he did offensively. And, that might have hindered him there as well. So with all that being said, if he's 100% healthy and it looked like he should be, it's a no-brainer move for the Dodgers to make.
Yeah, I think so too. And, you and I talked the other day about how maybe Miguel Vargas or Andy Pages could push Manuel Margot out of a role. And while I still think all those points we made are valid, the one thing that I think we acknowledged on that show and that's been nagging me since is the right-handed hitting half of a outfield platoon plays like once or twice a week. There's just not that many left. And the Dodgers might face more left-handed pitchers than some teams do because they have so many left-handed hitters, they might get stacked against, but still it's a lot less playing time. And I don't know that that's a role you want a guy like Vargas or Pages being in I think it's probably better for them and better for the Dodgers in the long run that they're playing every day in AAA instead of playing once or twice a week in the big leagues. And so I think that what Kik'e does is he fills that role with a little bit more of a Dodger type of player than Manuel Margot is. And I feel bad because like we've even had comments on our YouTube saying, why is everybody dumping on Margot? And I don't think we've ever intended to dump on Manuel Margot. It's just, there's nothing about him that's super exciting about his style of play. He's fine defensively. He's kind of fast and he hits lefties okay. Like I just said, fine, kind of, and okay. Like that's Manuel Margot. He's fine and he's kind of okay. And Kik'e is roughly as fine and kind of okay, except that he's a fan favorite in LA and he's a guy who the Dodgers know, to the extent that, and you know how I feel about postseason clutch stuff, but Kik'e has performed in the postseason. And that's important to the Dodgers. And so, if anything, they know he's not going to shrink under the pressure. It doesn't mean he's going to perform every time, but if he doesn't, it won't be because he was overwhelmed. And not that Margot would be, but I mean, the Dodger, all we remember about Margot in the postseason is getting caught trying to steal home against the Dodgers. I don't remember what else he did in that series. But we know what Kik'e is, and we know that the fans love him. And like, it is a no-brainer because it's the same basic player, except one we like more.
Yeah. And yeah, like I said, can play infield, which they don't necessarily need another infielder, but it doesn't hurt to have one. Yeah, Margot, like I said, he was just the guy that we didn't know. Like we've seen him play against the Dodgers as a Padre. We saw him in the World Series that year against the Rays, but we don't know him, and he's just a run of the mill type player. He was gonna maybe have some good at bats against left-handed pitching, probably make some strong defensive plays, and but Kiké can do that same thing and for and cheaper, even though the Dodgers did pay down some of Margot's contract. Kiké just ended up being cheaper than what Margot would have cost anyways. The other part of this, Kiké's the love for Kiké from a lot of fans. Some of it could be a little bit more rational than others of he can do no wrong type of deal. I don't think it's anything like that for us. It's just he does well in the role that he has for the Dodgers when he's been a utility guy that doesn't play every day and can fill in. He's been good and he's had success in the postseason, and that's been obviously we remember those things a lot as well. But the other part is some people wanted to see those younger guys maybe have a chance. I saw my first thought when Margot was traded was Kiké's back. Some people I saw on social media's first thought when Margot was traded was, oh, they might believe in Vargas or Pages or some combination of the two. And not that they don't believe in them, but this year, next year, maybe even the year after that, as long as Freddie Freeman's still here and that core is locked in, the Dodgers won't necessarily be in the realm of letting guys kind of figure things out. It'll be a little bit more, okay, we need to know what we're getting. And, not that Vargas or Pages can't be those guys that can be good hitters, but I do think, a little bit more of a known commodity is what they're looking for right now.
Yeah, and I do think that Vargas and maybe Pages too, I think they're going to get chances this year because people do get hurt. I really do think it comes down to you don't want them to have a bench role. If they're in the big leagues, they want it to be because they're going to get playing time. So if Vargas starts the season batting 340 in AAA, and then somebody who plays one of the positions he can play, gets hurt, boom, or somebody struggles. I don't even think, as excited as I am that Jason Hayward's back, I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that he's going to be as good as he was last year, so they might have to shuffle their outfield plans, and Vargas or Pages could play into those plans. There's a whole lot of ways that those guys could get playing time. And when you look at over the course of any season, so many guys end up playing in the big leagues. They're going to get their chances. I think it really is serving them best for them to be in AAA until there's a chance for real playing time in the big leagues. And I did look, and Margot, he did okay he did pretty well in 2020 in the postseason. Since then, he's been lousy. His OPS, not slugging percentage. These would be bad slugging percentages. These are his OPSs the last 3 years in the postseason: 393, 347, and 333. So he's not quite the proven postseason performer that Kik'e is. And last thing I'll say about Kik'e is he embraces the role. And I think there's value in that too. The fact that he came over, and you remember when he got traded, there did seem to be like a little bit of disappointment in his voice at that first press conference of, well, here I am. I guess I'm back to being a role player, but then he just embraced it and he loved it. And obviously he loved it enough that he wanted to come do it again. And I think there's a ton of value in having a role player who, because like if Vargas was a platoon player, he would be constantly thinking, I should be playing every day. And Kik'e, while he probably still would feel in his heart that he could be playing every day, he just specifically signed up to be a role player. And I think there's value in somebody who signs up for that role.
Yeah, and it doesn't hurt that he is beloved at Dodgers. It's a 1-year deal. Even if he was very, very bad, he's still going to be one of the most cheered Dodgers the entire season. And he felt, the opposite of that in Boston. He was really good that first year, started struggling a little bit that second year. By the third year, they essentially ran him out of town to a certain degree. So
wait, Boston fans treated somebody poorly?
Yeah.
And that guy ended up with the Dodgers? Who would have thunk?
Who would have thought? But again, I don't think we're going to see Kik'e on Tuesday, but there's a lot of players we're going to see on Tuesday that gets us excited. And the start of the episode, I said at Camelback Ranch, that was just me saying spring training, but it's in surprise against the Rangers. But there's a lot to be excited about, so let's talk about that. So keep it locked on Dodgers. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Go get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. New customers right now can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. It's $150 if your bet wins. You can bet on a team to win. You can bet on the over-under of the points total for both teams. You can bet the over-under on points by a player, assists by a player, rebounds by a certain player. There's a lot to get into. So go to FanDuel.com/lockedon and check out the app. Remember, it's $150. All you got to do is put down one $5 bet. If that bet wins, you got an extra $150 to mess around with. So go check it out, FanDuel.com/lockedon, and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. I want to thank you for being an everydayer. If you are one, that is just someone who listens or watches every day or close to every day. You can find us wherever you find podcasts and on YouTube. Just search for Locked On Dodgers. You can also go beyond the podcast and become a Locked On Dodgers insider at joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. You can text directly with us, get the updates. There was a handful of updates this morning as everything was kind of going down. And if you're someone who's at work or can't be on Twitter or whatever all day, we got you covered in that realm, and we can talk about it. So go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers, and you'll get provided that service. And you also get some special stuff during season when I'm at the games and all that type of stuff. So go check it out right now. All right, Jeff, there's a lot going on in Tuesday's game. Shohei Ohtani is expected to make his Dodger debut, and we're supposed to find out what the top three is going to look like. We know basically what 2 and 3 look like. We know Mookie's going to bat leadoff. We'll find out what 2 and 3 is, and then we'll see what else. And who knows who else is going to be in the lineup. But pitching-wise, there's also a lot to look forward to, right?
Yeah, Bobby Miller is starting, and that's always exciting. And then he's being followed by some other guys, Gavin Stone, who, as everydayers know, I'm very high on and very excited about what he's going to do this spring. He'll be following Miller. Michael Grove will pitch, who's kind of in the same boat as Stone, as maybe playing for a back end of the rotation or a long relief kind of spot. Blake Trinan, who I don't believe we've seen yet in spring training, right? And so we haven't seen him pitch in a long time. He'll be pitching, and Matt Gage, who they got in the Caleb Ferguson trade. So at least those 5 guys are pitching, and then who knows who else we'll see. But those 5 guys alone, combine that with the first game ever of Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, and Shohei Ohtani playing together, and it makes for a very, very interesting, definitely the most interesting game of the spring so far.
Yeah, for sure. And Vesia's had a couple appearances now, not the most consistent or not the best appearances so far. So Matt Gage, I mean, there is theoretically a way for him to maybe find, maybe not at the start of the season, but at least at the very least, open the door for that possibility during the season to be a lefty out of the Dodgers bullpen. So we'll see what he brings. But obviously, congrats to Rangers fans. They got the World Series last year, and now they get the first Ohtani Dodger sighting in spring training. So everything's coming up Rangers other than the coming up Dodgers.
Yeah, and I was talking yesterday about the distance, about the inconvenience of the fact that the Dodgers are on the road on both Tuesday and Wednesday, first in Surprise and then in Goodyear. And while those two are kind of out on the outskirts of the spring training area, I looked it up after I was done recording because I had said it was probably about a 40-minute bus ride to each spot. It's actually only about 20 to 25 minutes, which isn't as bad. And obviously, none of it compares to the travel in Florida for spring training. And so, they're not going to not play somebody just because he has to ride a bus for 25 minutes. And heck, I don't even know if, maybe they're allowed to drive their own car. I don't know if they want to, but it's not that long a bus ride. And Surprise is a nice stadium. First time I went there, I heard a guy play the national anthem on the electric guitar, and that was kind of cool. Not quite as good as when I heard Smash do it at Dodger Stadium, but still pretty darn good. And that was also the day that I watched Will Ferrell play 4 different positions, because he played in 5 different games, and I was at 2 of them that day. I went to 3 games that day, but the first one was in Surprise, and it's a nice stadium. So it should be a fun time watching. I just can't wait to see Shohei Ohtani and Dodger Blue, like playing an actual baseball game.
Yeah, and that's really, like I said, as we've said a lot of times on here, there's not a lot to gauge from spring, especially for the established players, Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, Shohei Ohtani. But the excitement of seeing Shohei Ohtani, at least for the first time, is very good. Wednesday we get to see Yamamoto for the first time on the mound as a Dodger. So that's, also exciting. So there's just a lot to be, looking forward to this spring. You got the pitching, and, now we're kind of awaiting the return of Kik'e and everything else. But yeah, but beyond that, the Dodgers continue to play well in the spring, if that matters to you. The starters are doing well, and then the younger guys, maybe the pitchers aren't doing so well late in the games, but the offense is holding up with them. So that'll work.
And a lot of the pitchers are doing well, and the guys who are struggling, it's not guys who really concerns you too much. Gavin Lux played shortstop on Monday for the first time in about a year. That was nice. I think he said he'll have Tuesday off and then play back-to-back games Wednesday and Thursday. That's kind of the next box for him to check. So that was exciting. It was fun to see some of those younger, like Drew Avans. I don't know if we've ever talked about Drew Avans on this podcast, even though I've been impressed by Drew Avans for like 2 years in the minor leagues. He is a guy, he's toolsy. He has potential to be a good little ball player. And we saw him, a play that I actually, after the game was over, when my sons got home from school, I actually turned the game back on and found that play to show them, where he was on third base at second and third, 1 out, and Dalton Rushing hit a ground ball to shortstop. And the Rockies shortstop, whose name I can't remember right now, he's one of those, I'd recognize his face and I'd say, oh, I know that guy's name, but I don't know it right now. And he looked Avans back to third and then casually threw to first. And Avans recognized, well, he didn't really look me back. He's not forcing me to go all the way back, and he's not putting any juice on this throw. And so as soon as the shortstop turned to throw to first, maybe another Rojas. Is there a Rojas? Anyway, Avans took off for home and scored. It reminded me, obviously a different situation, but the play in the 2020 World Series when Mookie scored from first on Seager's, or scored from third on Seager's ground out to first base. And it was that same kind of got a good jump and slid in head first just ahead of the tag. Not quite the stakes. The World Series was a little bit higher stakes than a spring training game, but Drew Avans, I like that kind of intensity in spring training. A guy who says, you know what, why can't I be on the team?
Yeah, either Tovar or Trejo.
Trejo, yeah. That's who it is. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's Drew Avans is a guy that's been on OKC for a few years now. Like I said, we've never talked about him. He's not necessarily a prospect or a top prospect, but one of those guys that could find his way to the majors with the Dodgers at some point if they're in a bind, or could find his way to another team via trade or release at some point. Whatever the case is. Ryan Noda, who they played against the other day with the A's, was a guy kind of like that. Had a big spring a few years ago for the Dodgers and didn't quite work out there, and went to the A's, and probably a little bit lucky for him. The A's are a team that doesn't employ very many MLB caliber players initially, and he became an MLB caliber player last year and did really well. And there's a lot of guys like that over the years for the Dodgers. But yeah, the other part, remiss to not mention former friend of the show, Cody Hosey, who's had a rough couple last years. He's looked good so far early this spring.
3-for-4, baby.
Yeah, he's up to 750 on the season or on the spring. And he's looked pretty good. And again, that's a guy that was touted when he first got drafted, didn't quite pan out, but again, has stuck with it. And, I don't know if he did anything different, if his swing anything different, but still a guy that has a lot of talent that at one point could be a Dodger. Yeah,
with the caveat that it is 4 at-bats. I mean, they're line drives, like they're legitimate hits. And so he's looking good. And I would love for him to bounce back because he had a ton of potential when the Dodgers drafted him. It was him and Michael Busch mentioned in the same sentence all the time. They were drafted right near each other in the draft, and different positions and different kinds of players, but same kind of expectations. And Busch definitely has outperformed Hosey so far, but I'd love to see Hosey bounce back because not just because he's been on this podcast, but because there's a lot of potential there. And his mom follows me on Twitter.
There you go. And in the 5th starter race, Ryan Yarbrough made his start. Won an inning and 2/3, struck out 3, only walked 1, no hits allowed. So between Knack and Stone and Yarbrough all through their first appearances, it's a pretty close race.
Yeah, Yarbrough pitched, and then they brought in Nabil Krismat, and I think the Rockies hitters was like, does anybody on this team have a fastball? Like, but yeah, I Yarbrough, other than Yarbrough's last game last year, he pitched really well after he came over to the Dodgers, and I feel bad that I don't see a role for him on this Dodgers team. But today watching him, well, maybe I'm wrong, because he seems like he can get some guys out, and maybe there is a role for a guy like that. Probably not one of their 5 starters, but a guy who can get guys out. There's going to be value there.
Yeah, he's probably slightly above, but similar to Manuel Margot, where he's just kind of there. He's solid enough. Last year he was really good for the Dodgers up until the end. But again, we want the exciting. Gavin Stone's more exciting. Landon Knack would be more exciting. These guys would be more exciting than that. Emmett Sheehan has been shut down a little bit with some soreness, but he should be back soon. So we'll see what happens there. But that just opens the door for Stone a little bit more if he has another good outing following Miller tomorrow or today's game now. So,
which he's going to.
Yeah, there we go. So, shout out the Dodgers for giving us something to talk about. And tomorrow we'll have more to talk about with Ohtani's first ABs, who is top 3 in the order, and how did those pitchers fare. We'll get into that. Then we'll look forward to Yamamoto's game on Wednesday. So thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen. Thank you for listening. Make sure to find us wherever you find podcasts and on YouTube. Make sure we come in every day or by listening or watching every day. Remember, the Locked On Podcast Network has some 24/7 streaming channels on YouTube, Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles, covering the sports news and stories from the sports world and the LA sports world from Locked On hosts and experts. You can also go beyond the podcast and become an insider at Locked On. Join subtext.com/Locked On Dodgers and text directly with us. You can follow us on social media, Twitter and Instagram at Locked On Dodgers. Jeff is on Twitter at SnyDog. I'm at Vincent91. You can DM us there if you have any questions or comments. You can also send those via email, lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or via voicemail text at 323-863-5625. We're here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be here with us when you get in your car. If you're at home, take some advice by podcast, Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. Have a good one.
We'll talk to you tomorrow.